Okay guys, well today we're going to be talking about limiting factors that exist within populations. So I'm trying to do my best to explain what this means and how it works. Now, best way we can explain a limiting factor is it's an environmental selection pressure that's limiting population growth. And so we have two main categories of these things. We have what we call our top-down limiting factors. Okay, and we have our bottom-up limiting factors. Now, our top-down limiting factors, the best way to think about this would be like as in a food web or a energy pyramid. Your top-down limiting factors come from things that are above your particular species that you're looking at, above them in the food chain. So, for instance, predation would be a top-down limiting factor. Our bottom-up limiting factors are again factors that are coming from the bottom of our food chain. So examples of that would be, nutrients, food, the amount of space the organisms have, okay, and that's there, of course, our bottom up. All right, so let's look at a couple of examples of this. So we can consider corals. We see corals grow on tropical reef systems. Now, corals are, of course, animals. They're not plants. Now, living inside our corals, we have something very important called zooxanthellae. Now, zooxanthellae are a very, very important kind of algae, and they have this symbiotic relationship. They live within the tentacles or the nematocysts of our coral polyps, and they actually are what give our coral its color. All right, now you can see this one here. This is a clear coral, but you can actually see into it, and you can see that it's green. Now that indicates that the zooxanthellae is actually photosynthesizing. So what it's doing is it's using the sunlight energy that's coming from above, okay, and it's photosynthesizing using that energy, and it's producing sugar, all right? And obviously then the coral, which is our animal part, is using that sugar for respiration, and it's also going to use the energy that it gets from that respiration then to build new parts to its body. So the zooxanthellae gets a nice safe place to live within the coral, and the coral itself is able to make its own, or is able to use the sugar produced from photosynthesis for respiration. So it's a win-win relationship. Anyway, so if we're talking about top-down limiting factors, what can limit the growth of corals is this stuff here. Now, this is a type of algae which grows on the surface of corals, okay? And what it's doing, of course, is it's blocking out the sunlight from reaching the zooxanthellae inside of it. And of course, if no sunlight can reach the zooxanthellae that are inside the coral, then it can't photosynthesize. And so that would be top-down, as a top-down limiting factor. Now, as a top-down limiting factor on our algae, or our coral algae, we have parrotfish. So our parrotfish eat our grazers. They go along and they munch up and they eat all of the algae off the coral and keep that algae in check. They'll also eat any algae which is floating within the marine ecosystem, so free floating within the water column. Now there's a couple of problems with that, and it all comes down to humans. Humans can really, really disrupt this process, and let's have a look at a couple of the ways that can happen. So in this image here, you can see a huge area. Now this area, you can see is undergoing a process known as eutrophication, whereby lots of nutrients and minerals have escaped into the ocean, causing what we call an algal bloom. Now, of course, that algal bloom is what's going to stop the sunlight from reaching the coral. So that's a really, really big disruption to the coral reef ecosystem. Another big problem that humans can cause is the fishing of our grazers. So taking away our keystone species like our parrotfish, and taking these away is going to reduce the number of grazers on the reef. Again, that's a really, really big problem, because if there's no grazers to eat the algae and keep that population in check, then the algae species is going to get out of control. Now, there's a very nice table in your books to sort of summarize this. You can see here, this is where human impact is minimal. So you've got a high grazing activity from your parrotfish, and you've got a low amount of nutrient level in the water. Okay, so you haven't got any eutrophication, and the amount of fishing going on in that ecosystem is low. And so what we get is massive forms of corals and crustose coralline algae. Now you can see here what happens as fishing or increasing human impact. So fishing is going up or increasing. We've got a decrease in the number of parrotfish. And so what happens is we get more turf algae. So we've got more algae that are growing on top of the coral reefs, which are going to be blocking out the sunlight for our zooxanthellae. Over this side, you can see here again, nutrient levels in the water are increasing, i.e. there's more eutrophication. All right, so more runoff coming from the land, more nutrients in the water, causing, again, more free-floating algae. Okay, so more algae actually in the water column. And you can see then the shift from our massive forms of corals into crustose or coralline algae only. Now, if we have both of those things happening, so lots and lots of fishing and lots of eutrophication, we get lots of this frondose macroalgae. Now, what I'm going to ask you to do now is go away and research what each of these three things looks like. And what I want you to do is then explain basically what we've just talked about, why each of these 1, 2, 3 types of coral may start occurring. Thank you for watching, and let's see what you can come up with.